Operator Syndrome, episode 57. So today I'm gonna hijack this thing a little bit, and I'm gonna have a little pity party for myself here. I I to talk about the transition piece for those of us, who lost brothers and friends,
Mhm.
during our time in service. Um, it's undeniably a part of the baggage that we carry with us when we leave and forever. It's becoming clearer to me that it's a forever thing.
Yeah.
So, I've talked about some folks before. Um, there are some others. Um, And so I think today I'm gonna kind of go through the list, have a little ad hoc in memoriam here. I just want to talk about, them. Some of them I knew better than others. I knew all of them, but just tell some stories about them. How I remember them, and and I think that's if I'm gonna put my story down on tapes as we are, it's to talk about the future, to talk about that transition piece. You can't move on without knowing what's sitting in the back of my head all the time,
Yeah.
right? So I feel compelled, and feel compelled to honor them one more time from my perspective. So, I wanted to start off. I'm sitting here for folks looking at YouTube versus any of the podcast
Mhm.
platforms. I'm sitting here. I'm looking at this desk in front of me, and I've got a bunch of memorial bracelets in front of me. Um, these memorial bracelets, they're pretty ubiquitous now, or have been. They're pieces of oval metal. They've got stamped details um, on them. It says the name and rank of the person, the unit they were in, when they died. The unit, I said that already. But so these memorial bracelets, they're everywhere. Although I see them less and less as time goes on.
Mhm.
Um, you know, when I was in when I showed up to the Ranger Regiment, um, I only knew it as a Ranger thing.
Oh, really?
That may not be true. That was just my experience. And I only saw what I saw. So I always thought it was just a Ranger thing. It spread everywhere. And
Yeah.
again, did it originate in the Rangers? I don't know. Probably we'll even say not. But I knew the memorial bracelet culture thing was strong at the Ranger Regiment at the very beginning of the war. It was very strong.
Yeah.
Um, in the Rangers, we have a culture where we honor the dead. It's something we call we when one dies, we call him the airborne ranger in the sky,
Mm.
and remembering those who have fallen is a huge part. When you're a new guy who shows up, you're assigned often someone who has passed from your platoon, right?
Mhm.
Or even from your squad, because a lot of freaking Rangers have died. So,
Yeah.
and it's your job to remember the details about them when they died. That there's someone that you got to remember. So that's just a part of the culture. And like when you exercise, you always do one more or whatever you're doing for the airborne ranger in the sky. Again, it's built into the culture, right? We don't want to forget these guys. To
It's huge.
this day, I'm a 30 something year old dude. I've been out for 15 years or whatever. Like, believe it or not, if I'm cranking out push ups or if I'm doing reps or something, I do one extra for the airborne ranger in the sky. I still do it.
Yeah.
That's how ingrained it is into the culture. But these bracelets, wherever they got their start, um, you wear it around, and like you wear it around everywhere you go, and it helps you to remember them. Right, remembering is a big thing.
Huge.
Remembering can also hurt you, though, is what sort of happens to me. I did want to say one thing, going back to why I think bracelets could potentially have strong ties to the Rangers, is because I went to some museum. Now, it was either the Airborne and Special Operations Museum in Fayetteville, North Carolina, or in the DC area, could have been some museum around there. Um, and I was surprised to see in an exhibit about Merrill's Marauders.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Merrill's Marauders, they operated in the
Hmm.
Burma theater. They did long range penetration raids. Um, if you don't know about him, you need to read about him. Absolutely unbelievable feats. The guys
Legendary.
starve themselves to death. I mean, it's basically like, it would seem like Ranger School is basically modeled
Yeah,
after
I
this.
know.
Just like starve yourself to death, move long, 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 long range in the woods, and then attack an airfield. Like that. That's
Yeah.
what these guys did.
Didn't they work with the Gurkhas?
Uh, I'm not. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I do believe they had to partner with, indigenous
Yeah.
forces to be able to operate like they did. But um,
Yeah.
they were, and they're part of the Ranger lineage. The symbol that we use, the star lightning bolt, and the star that comes from that is from Merrill's Marauders.
Right.
And so it's them combined with the named Ranger battalions from World War II, where
Right.
we get a lot of like our imagery. But the, at the museum, I actually saw a memorial bracelet made by a Merrill's Marauder,
Huh.
um, which was made out of like, whatever kind of tin
Huh.
ration can they had at the time.
No kidding.
And the guy had inscribed the names of dudes that he lost at um, the airfield. I know what it is if I could spell it out sort of, but I think it's Mitiknia, I think, or something like that. It's one of
Yeah.
the big campaigns that the Marauders did. So going back to them, like, so
It's
uh,
cool.
so and if you're a ranger, rangers are big history nerds,
Yeah.
or me, or maybe it's just me. It seems like we are. So um, I wanted to bring up those bracelets because I'm sitting here and I'm looking at 8 of them, and I could have more. And these are guys who died in, sort of in the line of duty, I guess. Um, and there are more, but I had to stop getting them because it's fucking crazy. These bracelets, they represent dudes I knew, dudes I interacted with, and it starts. It's you're not supposed to have 12 of these bracelets. That's not normal.
Yeah.
That's not, and that doesn't count the guys who I have written on a piece of paper here who died otherwise. And the saddest thing is, I am not unique in any way. You know, Guys from my time, we all have names on names on names on names of dudes that we knew that died. You know, and I think it's important to call that out, to say, I know you all are out there, and I'm one of you. We we're carrying on, but like, but to call out that that's not normal. You know, if most of us do one contract and we get out, and especially those of us who were in the aughts,
Hmm. Yeah, for
like
sure.
we did one and we had enough of that. But in a 4 5 6 year span, 12 15 plus dudes that died, like that's not normal. It's normal
No.
for us, but that's not normal. And
Right.
to think, if you haven't dealt with it, or if you haven't come to the realization that that shit drags on you and you're
Hmm.
carrying that, you're you're out of your mind. You're
Yeah.
fooling yourself. You're ignorant, or you're being intentionally obtuse,
Or
like,
maybe avoidant. You
or
just,
avoidant.
yeah. There it could be several things, but you're right. The humane response is grief.
Yeah. So I wanted to again talk about these guys because they're interesting guys, and I've talked about some. I talked about Garbs already.
Yeah.
2007. Um, somebody I didn't talk about was Benjamin Dillon. Dillon was in Bico. He was a guy from Ohio. I didn't know him that well, but what he represented for he was a second platoon guy. I didn't know him that well because second platoon second platoon was he was a tab and I was still a private, and second platoon was if third battalion has a reputation for being a scary place, where we treat our new guys like crap,
Right.
and BCO is probably up there with as the company that does that. And then second platoon BCO is like the platoon that's like you didn't want to be a new guy. So of the battalion that comes back in our day, back in our day. And so but Dillon, he got tabbed right before I did. Um but he's a guy from Ohio. And he was, you know, with it was kind of strange because Garbs passed first, and I knew Garbs a lot more. But for some reason, Dillon passing, Garbs died in a helicopter crash, and Dillon, um, if I'm remembering correctly, and I hope I am, he actually died from enemy contact. So, and so that's when I was like, whoa, right. So Garbs dying was like I could almost rationalize in my head that Garbs not it's an accident, right? Like the
Yeah.
helicopter fell out of the sky.
Yeah.
Like that sucks. That's an accident. What we do is dangerous. Okay, I
So
can deal with that.
with Garbs, it wasn't shot down. It was a mechanical something went
It
wrong.
was, yes,
Right.
it
So
was.
that does put it kind of in a different category. You kind of enemy contact is one
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like if it had RPG had hit it, it would have
Mm-hmm.
been different than oh something went wrong, and that happens in training as well as combat. So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It makes it doesn't change anything
right.
other than, but it does in your head.
Yeah.
You put it in a different sort of bucket,
Box.
for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah.
Dillon was the first guy in the company that got hit and killed. Other guys had gotten hit, but he was the first one that died while I was there, and that was like a new guy, a new bucket, a new box for me to put in and be like, oh
Right.
shit, yeah, this is real. Like there is an enemy out there, and they will mess us up.
They have a vote.
They have a vote, and he got a lot of outpouring of love from his hometown. And again, I got connections to Ohio, like that area of Ohio. So like I felt that. Um, and then I talked about Rudd. Uh, Rudd was Mosul. I talked about you know what do the last time I spoke to him, and then he passed. I talked about McGee, of course. Um, and then those were all while I was in. Okay, and so that's four plus people. I talked about Bob who died drunk driving. They call it an accident.
You wonder for those listeners um, who it may not be in the loop on this. A lot of times, well, veteran suicides are high. We know this, and one of the things that's happened repeatedly across. I'm not talking about any particular group. I did a funeral for this when I was a chaplain, actually in Pensacola, Florida. Burial there where there are these there accidents, but we're not sure for a number of reasons. Number one, a family, it has to do with they if it's a suicide and it's ruled a suicide, some of the benefits are not there for the families or the dependents
Mm.
who survive. I know this from my chaplain days. So there's all kinds of stuff that's happening, and without going off on a huge tangent, like you'll have somebody will be out on a crotch rocket and just happen to hit the only tree within 5 miles, and it's like, well, is that an accident? And they can't really tell. So this is a phenomenon that, sadly, with veterans, we don't, is it a suicide? Is it an accident?
Yeah, for Bob, for Bob, I'm we that actually applies. We're pretty sure it what if you get rip roaring drunk and then you try to drive, how much of an accident is that? You
Yeah.
know, is
Right.
kind of is also some more nuance there.
Sure.
But then for him, that actually did exactly what you said, did come into play. You know, they do their post mortem analysis, they check the blood, and that actually came up where the company commander made a school made us school circle around him, and he said, "Hey, Bob was drunk, really drunk, and that's going to be reflected in the payout to his family." He
Hmm.
said that. So even accident a traditional accident, if it's caused by, let's call it what it is, negligence, that
Negligence.
also has an impact, you know, which is a shame, but it's
Yeah.
how insurance companies work.
Yeah.
Um, there was a guy, there was this guy Woods that who was in. I went to airborne school with him, and he ended up in third battalion. Um, I believe he ended up in third battalion, but we were in airborne school together and RIP around the same time. And he'd committed suicide. So he was another guy. He was like the actual first dude that I knew who had died.
Mm.
Um, but I didn't know him that well. Um, and so, so those were, I don't know, how many people did I name off? Was that like 6 or 7? So again,
Something like that.
that's like 4
A lot.
4 or 5 years. That's a lot. So I'm already dealing with that, okay? And and then I get out, and then 6, 7 more dudes die after I get out. The one that really bothered me
Mhm.
was James Patton. So Patton was this he was like the epitome of like, Napoleon syndrome complex,
Oh,
small
yeah.
guy, short
Yeah.
guy, angry dude.
Yeah.
That's how he was for like the longest time. The first time I saw him, my buddy Jose and I, we show up, and he was pulled from a deployment to go to Ranger School, right? Because we're crazy like that, right? We'll pull you from combat to go to Ranger School. That's what we think about it. So, so he
Yeah.
got pulled halfway through to go to Ranger School, and you could just tell. I mean, I'm a fairly good read of personalities. I'm like, this guy's got like a huge chip on his shoulder. He's a small dude. I don't even know how,
He's a terrier.
5'5", small guy, looked really young. First off, we were all young. We were all
Yeah.
babies. I look at platoon photos. We're like babies. They look like kids, ROTC kids. So young. Um, JROTC,
Yeah,
actually,
right. That's right.
like the Boy Scouts. But he looked really young.
Yeah.
Um, his dad was a sergeant major in the special operations stuff. I think he was definitely a ranger. He might have been a unit guy. I can't remember. I don't know for sure. Um, but he was just a terror. And when he came back from ranger school and he was a tab, it was he was not a dude you wanted to be around. He was just smoking everyone, like yelling constantly, just like borderline evil.
I
Like,
know the type. I know. Anyway.
like Steve was, just
No.
like Steve. No,
There's a guy, Johnstone, and maybe I'll tell that story one of these days about an incident in Tijuana. But he was about 5'6" and wanted to fight everything that walked. I mean, even and if there was no one else to fight, he'd fight his own guy, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was Pat.
Yeah.
That was Patton. Patton was, golly, he was wild. He was a wild, angry dude, little dude, and he spoke. He was a white boy. He grew up in El Paso. Spoke, I'm told, perfect Spanish. Like my buddy Jose was like thrown off by this like little angry, like dude speaking perfect Spanish. Um, so he was like a complex dude. So that's how I knew of him. He was in the same platoon. Basically, stayed away from him forever. Like I was like, this dude's trouble. That's my policy of avoidance. Just stay the fuck away from this guy.
Yeah.
Um, and then, like, as I became saltier, tabbed, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
gun team leader and aligned team leader, like, his peers, as always happens, went away. They left, they got RFS, they went up to the unit, they did whatever it is they do, and he was sticking around. And he seemed to be taking the path to be, a Ranger Regiment guy, maybe a platoon sergeant one day. We had conversations asking him if he was going to, go to the unit, going to try out. He seemed to indicate that that's not really something he was interested in doing. That's at
Yeah.
least what he said. It seemed like he maybe wanted to be like a long-term guy in the Range Regiment. And so over time, by default, like, he's a squad, always sort of a level up, but we sort of started to become peers. And he eventually mellowed out. It's sort of cliche. He had a kid, he had a
Mm.
daughter, and
No,
then that's when I saw the biggest change
that'll do it.
in
Mhm.
him, you know,
Yeah.
um, and got to know him, and and he still had his moments. He definitely still had his moments, and I never actually, that's not true. I very briefly was slotted as a team leader under him, and I never had any problems. I never had any problems, um, but it was only briefly, and it worked out. But got to know him better, and he chilled out, um, and and towards the end, knew him to be like a pretty good dude. No ill will, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, he was he knew so much about so much. He was like a guy who really loved being a ranger, really knew the technical specs of everything, and he knew the demo and he knew the SOPs. Like
Mm.
he knew all that stuff. He knew the FMs, the field main. Like he actually knew that stuff and was
Yeah.
was into it.
A
You know
nomenclating geek.
exactly. He knew all that stuff, and he was a. We had a terminology for it that probably doesn't go past these days. I think
Yeah.
the PC version nowadays you make Geardo,
Yeah.
a gear
Okay.
weirdo. Like he was
Yeah.
really into kit, like his kit. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's
They're out
okay.
there.
I mean it's important to like to have good kit and to have your setup. Like oh that's all good.
That's cool.
But back in those days, he stood out as being like one of those. Anyways, um, eventually got to know him better and understand him a little bit better, and to
Mm.
put into context, like why he might be like kind of a small angry dude. Like
Hmm.
there's probably some very obvious reasons for that, right? Um, so and plus he chilled out, which is always helpful. Like
Yeah.
but everyone work from opposite ends towards the middle to where you can live peaceably. Um, that last staff duty I had before I checked out for good. Um, I was on staff duty when he signed back in to leave from leave, and it comes up. We chatted while bullshitted. I think his daughter was with him. He's getting ready to go, and and uh, and sign him out. That's the last time I saw him. He said good luck. You know, and didn't see him again. He passed in Iraq, 18 April 2010. It was a big mission, actually. I don't know I can't remember who the HVT was, but it was a joint raid with the unit. Um, and his bird landed unevenly. The bird flipped, and he was probably in the door, to jump out, and
Yeah.
you know, didn't make it. So, uh, and when I say that one bothered me, that one really bothered me. Because I was out. That was my platoon. He's a guy I knew, a guy I came eventually to like a lot, actually. Um, and I actually had a dream. I had this dream a couple times where I'd have this dream where it was him. And this is going to sound weird, but again, this is for the vets out there processing their
Yeah.
weird shit. So here we
Exactly.
go. I had this dream where I'm in like this black abyss, and like a spotlight comes on in front of me, and it's Patton. And he's standing there, and he's all he's got on are like army issued like underwear, like those briefs you get in
Yeah.
like the old school, like it's like whitey tidies, but they're brown.
Yeah.
So he's wearing those, and otherwise he's got nothing else on. And it's like it's panning into his face, and he's just got like the deepest look of sorrow
Yeah.
possible. And like
Mm.
he doesn't say anything, and I don't remember if I say anything, but like what's communicated is just like he's he's dead. Like I get the sense like he's pretty torn up that he's not going to be around his kid. Like just all the worst things we think about when we worry about our dudes that died, just
Mhm.
like in that, and that's all the dream is, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot in those things, and who the hell knows what our brains are trying to process. I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But I think one interpretation I would have, just based on your explanation of the dream, is that a sense of, and this goes to like if you're a war fighter in spec ops, you'll know this. There's something about when helicopters go down, and they are so dangerous. They go down all the time. I said on one episode, if I ever die, it's going to be in one of these damn helicopters. Either it's going to crash or it's going to get shot down. But there's something so inconsolable. Well, I mean, death is inconsolable no matter what. But there's nothing like the frustration an operator feels when a helo goes down. It's like, damn it, we couldn't even get our guns in the fight. It's almost like like we have these different categories of dying, and enemy fires one, and like the plane malfunctions, or you have a crash landing, but it's like, just get us in the fight. There's actually something almost, this sounds weird, almost there's something more comforting about dying in a firefight because you're there and you're in it. You didn't not even be able to get out of the helicopter. And that I have a helicopter story that we'll tell in future episodes, but yeah, just maybe that look on his face was, damn it, I can't even get my boots on the ground, and this is how it ends, but I don't know.
Yeah, it was weird. It was for me at the time. Again, I'm out at this point. I'm trying to. This is April of 10, so I guess I'm not in school yet, but I'm getting ready to probably do like a summer session, maybe at the end of May. But
Hmm.
but yeah, I had that dream a couple times. Um, and that was the start. Because then after that, um, lost Jason Santora. He was in D Company. He was another team leader around my time. He once you're around long enough, you start to open up your aperture, and like you get to know folks from other platoons, other companies. And I just remember, the team leaders would get together for whatever, and him and his buddy, I don't know if his buddy's still in, so I won't say his name, but they're just like characters, the two of them.
Mhm.
You see them from afar, they're like chopping it up, and you're just
Yeah,
like, that's pretty funny, man. And you could tell, people have got friends, and then people got people that there's like a special connection, and
yeah,
that you could sense a special connection between him and this other guy. And he was a
yeah,
funny Santora was a funny dude.
yeah.
um he passed. Santiago was like an interesting guy. He um he was like a Chicago area cop for forever. um
Hmm.
um and he was like in his like late 30s, early 40s, maybe even.
Whoa, whoa.
He's a and he joined the Rangers. He's like unique. So
Yeah,
he didn't
that's
have a Ranger
out there.
contract. He didn't even have a Ranger contract. He And it's a testament to his personality. He um he went to basic training to become an infantryman. Some My understanding was he had like a trip to some conventional unit, maybe an airborne unit, but somehow he after basic training he finessed his way into sniper school, the Army sniper school, and maybe he like top PT score. He was an awesome dude. Like you got to know this dude. I like this guy was older than me, but I had more time in the unit than him, and I kind of like just his manner. Like you looked up to this dude who was like a new guy. It was a very weird dynamic. He just had like this like aura about him, and he was very humble, a very humble dude, and he was starting from the bottom, and he was happy to be there, excited to be, in the Rangers, sort of living his dream. And while he was at sniper school, our battalion sniper section sergeant was also at sniper school, got to know this guy, caught the same vibe, like this guy's special, and then brought him in. and then
Wow.
brought him in. Um, and then he went right to the sniper section as a new guy. That doesn't
Wow.
happen.
That's pretty big time. Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Right.
So he was an untabbed dude in the sniper section at first, but again, very humble. Like he deserved that. And he did go to school, and he was one of our snipers, and he passed from a high altitude fall, operating in Afghanistan. Like I talked about it before, like sometimes you're picking your way up and down cliffs and stuff, and sometimes there's nothing on the other side. Um, and and that's how he went down. I actually drove up to Chicago for his funeral, and I was there. Saw my buddy Jose, who was in the sniper section too, and that was tough. I talked to before about like avoidance, like Garb. I believe his Garb's family was around, and I just couldn't go and talk to him.
Mm.
Like I was like trying to do something new. Like I wanted to tell his wife, Santiago's wife, like how much of an impact this guy had on me in the
Mm.
very short time that I knew him.
Yeah.
Like just how special of a guy he was. And I couldn't bring myself to do it. I sat through the ceremony and I was like, I'm out of here. And I went
Yeah.
to leave, and I go to the parking garage, and like um his wife is coming from the parking garage back to the ceremony, and I still couldn't say anything. So it was like, chance brought us together for a real quick moment, in a stairwell, and all I could muster was like, like I'm sorry and bye or something like that. Like I wanted to say so much more, but I couldn't say it.
Well, you're
Uh,
saying it now. Maybe she'll somehow miraculously tune in.
yeah, maybe.
Oh, it's important though. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone knew what a special dude that Santiago was, and how proud that, again, proud, like guys like that, you know, chose the Rangers, chose that path, part of the lineage, part of the history, that we tap back into. And then Nicol, Andrew Nicol, he was another third platoon guy. He was like a younger dude. Um, a few like groups after me, but he was an interesting character. He was from like the Northeast. Um, he was like when he first showed up, he was like kind of like an urbane type dude. Urbane, I'll say urban. He's like this white kid who was like into rap, and that's fine and that's all good. But third platoon was like full of a bunch of cowboys, like good old
Yeah.
boys.
Honky tonks.
Like Nicole actually had like the stomach tattoo. I can't remember
Oh
what he
yeah.
said. It was something silly, and we made fun of him for it, but he took it in good stride. Um, and so he was like the hip hop guy that showed up and then they transformed him into a cowboy. So like by the end, he's got cowboy hats and he's doing the whole stuff, and he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, I had nothing but great interactions with him. Then he passed. So and then on top of that, from like my own platoon, we're closing up on time here, but had more guys pass away. So Ryan Long, he was one of my new guys for a while. He was a great dude. He went to Ranger school. He got hurt, and they kicked him out. Right. So, like I said, the Rangers, like, there's like no mercy. There's no mercy. He got hurt. He got hurt in a way that was going to take him a long time to recover. So, like, they wanted him to leave and he could come back if they wanted to. I think they did do them the solid of keeping him on the same post. I can't remember what unit they sent him to, but one close by, a non-deployable unit, I believe. So they did try to help him out a little bit, except to keep him around. He passed away from a motorcycle accident. Some some lady not paying attention got onto a highway in Arkansas somewhere and T-boned. Um, and then my last name here, Andrew Rodriguez. Last but not least, um, during the ambush, I talk about in one of the episodes. There's a moment where we're low crawling through this ditch, and this tracer round goes like between someone's feet and my head, and the guy turns around. He's like, "Whoa, that was close." And we
Right.
laugh a little bit about it because what else are you gonna do?
Right.
That was Rod. That was him. Um, and he after Patton died and all these other dudes and all the deployments, who knows what it was, but my understanding is he took his own life. And um, so yeah, so that's a lot of names and a lot of stories. And I guess the moral of the story is that love all those guys, still love all of them. I can't do the bracelets anymore. There are too
Yeah.
many of them.
Yeah.
I stopped buying them. I stopped wearing them. I can't wear that shit anymore. It's not that, I don't want to remember them. It's I recognize that like I can't help but remember them, and I don't need a bracelet to do that, and I don't need a bracelet to tell other folks that I'm trying to remember them. And on the flip side it's I know those guys want me to look forward and to carry on. And if I were on a bracelet for someone, I wouldn't want I don't know that I came to the realization that I don't think I'd want you know them
Yeah.
looking down at their wrist every 10 minutes and getting taken out of the moment, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I don't wear them anymore. But that's it. That's all I got. Great guys.
Well,
Uh,
there's something profoundly consoling, if there is any consolation in losing somebody, in telling their story.
yeah.
There's something about remembering them and not forgetting. And yeah, I think somehow, and so we've told some stories, and maybe we need to, tell some more. I mean, go into a little more depth. I've got
Mhm.
some to tell, and in that way, and it's cathartic for all of us because they live on in our hearts, and their family members see that they're going to live on in our hearts no matter what. And there's nothing like it. It's very important to tell their stories. So.
We'll keep doing it, and we'll catch you in the next one.